So I would imagine in 2026, you know what that is. However, I'm about to show you something scary. Pipes. No, those type of pipes, fortunately. No, tuning pipes. Tuning pipes. This is what you had to use to tune your guitar back in the early 1980s. Tuning pipes. If you didn't blow into that until you were hyperventilating, you couldn't go on stage because your guitar wasn't in tune. It would sound like a bag of spanners. We are living in the age of digital luxury. So like a lot of you out there, I have been spanking my plank for some considerable time, for decades. And I only very, very occasionally dare to venture online to the online guitar forums. And to be perfectly honest, I'm really quite surprised that anyone on there has enough time to practice in between all the typing sessions. Every day seems to be a brand new crisis. It's 0.01 millimeters too high action on my top E string at the 12th fret. Will this particular type of solder, give my mid-range a bit more bloom? Crazy stuff, folks, crazy stuff. Meanwhile, back in the early 1980s, you know, when I started out, when lots of us started playing, before the internet turned everyone into a forensic scientist, able to tell if our guitar is out of pitch by 2 cents. Back in those days, if you lost your pitch pipe, you know, before the gig, that was it, over, unless you could maybe like, I don't know, use a dial-up tone on your phone to maybe try and tune to that. And if there was no telephone available, you probably just have to tune to what the bass player's bottom string had been tuned to for the last 3 or 4 months and just go with that. I guess what I'm saying is, we probably didn't overthink it way back when. So here are 5 things that absolutely no young guitarist ever said back in the early 1980s. Excuse me, I'm just wondering what the exact voltage and chemical makeup of the capacitor in your tone control is. Well, I only use paper and oil ones from 1959. If you opened the back of your guitar way back when and actually spotted a capacitor, you didn't think about the creamy, high-end attenuation. You thought, oh look, a little orange smarty, I hope it doesn't pop. Now, to be honest, I reckon most of us didn't even know what a tone pod does. You know, I still don't really know what a tone pod does. I just know that I don't have to touch it. I've always cranked it up to 10. Sometimes I even put a bit of gaffer tape over it just to make sure it doesn't move at any point during my live performance. Now people are like spending crazy, like 80 quid on a vintage capacitor. 80 quid. 80 quid back in 1983 would have got you a guitar, a pedal, a poke of chips, probably a half pint of lager, and probably the bus home as well. It's just crazy stuff, folks. So that's number 1. Now on to number 2. Oh, a bloke called Stratcat69 on the web bulletin board thing on the internet said I should boil my pickups in beeswax, fresh beeswax, to eliminate microphonic feedback at a temperature of 22.7 degrees. You can't go over that because, I don't know, maybe explode or something like that. Now, if you'd said something like that in a pub way back when, somebody would probably have taken you outside so you get some fresh air. Luckily, there was no global councils of bedroom experts to tell you that your gear is shit. Your only source of gear advice was from Dave, who lived up the road.
This is me, thinking as usual about Dave.
Who was maybe like a year or 2 older than you. And his main qualifications were they had once stood near the front of an Iron Maiden gig and he owned a soldering iron. That was it. You know, if Dave up the road had told me that putting WD-40 on your fretboard will make you play twice as fast, I would believe it. I wouldn't even look for a second opinion, even if my fingers smelled like a lawnmower for the next 6 months. But hey, we're happy. Number 3. Tonewood. Let's see what this guy says. I find the acoustic resonance of this heavy northern ash lacks the mid-range complexity of American basswood. Basswood. Back in 1983, you didn't care what your guitar was made of, you know, you cared about what colour it was and if it looked like a spaceship. Half the instruments were held together by toxic glue and sheer optimism. I'm sure one of the first guitars I ever owned was made out of a kitchen work surface. It certainly looked like it, and it weighed 2.3 tonne, metric tonne, 2.3 tonne. Big heavy guitar, but it was shaped like a spaceship and it was so bright it would blind people from about 4 miles away. I was happy with that. It probably survived being chucked down the stairs at the end of the gig and I would just use it the next again week at band practice with my pitch pipe tuners. Number 4. Ready for this? I need to buy a power attenuator for my half stack because 50 watts is just a bit too dominant for my bedroom's dynamic profile. Your bedroom's dynamic profile. Dynamic profile?
The dynamic profile modifier.
My dynamic profile. So back in the day, if you'd been lucky enough to, manage to save up all your money from your paper round or, whatever you did to earn money back in the day, and you owned a 50 watt Marshall, you'd be thinking, as soon as my mum and dad are out of the house, it's going up to 10. Doesn't matter about the, dynamic profile of your bedroom. It was all about standing in front of it, and I had hair back in those days, playing, and your hair was all going back, and your friend Dave from up the road, he could hear you playing.
Dave is super. Dave can do anything. Oh, he's great. He really is.
Meanwhile, all the wallpaper's off the wall and then the plaster's starting to crack. I'm even sure at one point I was rattling my mum's ornaments. Steady. I was rattling my mum's ornaments on the mantelpiece.
Matron, please.
Because I was playing so loud. My bedroom was Wembley Stadium or Hampden Park, would be closer to where I lived. And if any of the neighbours complained about the noise, I'd just play a little bit faster so that they couldn't quite work out the melody. So when they phoned the police to complain, they couldn't tell what I was playing. There'd be no detail in the call to the 999 shop and I wouldn't get in trouble. Ringing ears by the time you're 17. You gotta love it. Finally, number 5. We've got there. We're at number 5. I'm getting a tiny bit of signal degradation, so I need an isolated power supply and a true bypass looper to preserve my transient overdrive. Oh, bless your little hearts. Oh, so nice. Pedal boards, I didn't have a pedal board back then. I think my dad nailed a few bits of wood together and I got some masking tape and just sort of put masking tape around them just so it would stick, so that when I stood on them with my big Dr. Martens boots, they wouldn't immediately fly off, maybe injure the 3 people in the audience. Back in those days, there was no neat little metal trays with really tidy wiring all the way around with nothing sticking out, so that people, when they saw it, would go, oh, that's really nice. Very neat. Dunsey, you keep a very neat pedal board. Power supplies. A power supply was like for your kettle or something like that, the removable plug for your mum and dad's kettle. You didn't have power supplies, you had batteries, and the best thing was you could never find them. When you got to a gig, if your battery had run down, if some idiot, probably the bass player, had left a lead stuck into your stuck into your pedal, then your battery would go flat. So you'd spend like half an hour before the gig raking, that's a Scottish word, raking, all the way through your gig bag trying to find like a half dud battery that was right at the bottom, to try and save you, so you could get your MXR Distortion Plus right in front of your amp, everything turned up to 11 like a bumblebee in a jar. Shielded cables. I think the first cable I had was picking up the local taxi service. I could tell when the person next door was getting a taxi down to the pub. And buffer pedals. I didn't think not having a buffer pedal was like a tone loss. I thought it was adding character to my guitar signal. So do I have any advice these days? Well, not really, but I'll give you my thoughts. I think people should spend less time measuring the action on their guitar with like some digital calibration instrument and just turn up to like 10 and just play an E major chord and just rock out. As ever, folks, it's a privilege and a pleasure bringing you content on Dunsey's Guitar World. Cheers for now.